Hey Pokemon fans, it's JWittz here with your Pokemon trading card game card of the day. And today's card is going to be a super rare because it's Sunday. Super rare Sundays. Oh, that sounds great, doesn't it? Okay, it doesn't sound that great. It's actually really cheesy. But we're doing it anyways. Now today for Super Rare Sunday, I thought I'd talk about one of the most elusive kinds of super rares, the Star cards. Not only were these cards extremely hard to get, and they command pretty high prices for collectors, but it was interesting that you were only allowed to run one of them in your deck, and they were played as basic Pokemon. Now, that may seem really strange, and it was for the time, but they really weren't that good of cards. They weren't very playable, they didn't really make their way into decks, mostly because you could just have one of them. But they were definitely interesting, talked about, and well sought after for collectors. However, just one of these cards actually saw some really big success, and it found its way into winning a World Championship. That would be all the way back in 2008, when Jason Klaczynski ran a Jolteon Star in his Gardevoir Gallade deck. Now, for those of you guys who didn't play in 2008, Gardevoir Gallade was the dominating deck of the whole season. The whole way it worked was this. Gardevoir's attack Psychic Lock shut your opponent off from Pokemon powers. If you got a Psychic Lock out, you could lock your opponent out for the entire game, leave them powerless while you can still use yours, and you basically just swept the game pretty quickly as long as you got that Psychic Lock advantage. Now there are other Pokemon with very similar attacks, like Jirachi, which worked well with Gardevoir, and Gallade, which evolves from the same Kirlia line, and it also deals an extremely high amount of damage. So you had a heavy hitter, you had a power locker, and a little power locker if you ran the Jirachi, but Gardevoir Gallade was the deck to beat. It won both Nationals and Worlds, and it was all over the place. Now, Jason Klaczynski was one who understood this, and he wanted to tech his deck out so that he could have a higher advantage against other Gardy Gallade mirror decks. Now, one strange way, but it ended up winning him a crucial game, to do this was using Lake Boundary, which doubles all Pokemon's weakness, and Jolteon Star. Basically, this scenario works like this. Jason Klaczynski and Gino Lombardi, the national champion of that year, were down 1 prize to 1 prize in Game 3 of the top 4 of the World Championships in 2008. Gino Lombardi had a Gallade active with full HP, and Jason had a Gardevoir. Now, having a Gardevoir one-shot a Gallade was pretty much extremely rare, but it was a huge advantage if you could actually pull it off, and Jason was able to. He played his Lake Boundary, dropped his Jolteon Star, used Yellow Ray to deal 10 damage, and then did the 120 with 60 times 2 with Psychic Lock to secure himself the game, and he eventually went on to win the World Championships for the 2nd time, still being the only person to ever do that. The cool thing is that Jolteon Star, such a random tech card, won in the game, and it definitely immortalized Jolteon Star as the only good Star card that made its way into a World Championship deck. Now, Jolteon Star's Yellow Ray really isn't that great when you compare it to other stuff, but it was a big deal. You drop it on your bench, and then you put 10 damage in both your active Pokemon and your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, that's pretty restricting, and you can only run one Jolteon Star in your deck, so it's really not that great, but in that format, dealing 10 damage was the difference between a knockout and missing and losing your chance at the World Championships. So it was a pretty big deal. But let's take a look at Jolteon Star's successor and see how that did as well, because I think it left a pretty big legacy. About 2 years later, and the next modified format, Crobat G was released from the Platinum set. Crobat G did everything Jolteon Star could, better. It had free retreat, you could play it in as many copies as you wanted in your deck, you didn't do 10 damage to your own active, and you could put that 10 damage on any of your opponent's Pokemon, not just their active. So he was better than Jolteon Star in all ways. However, was he that good in the upcoming format? You bet he was. Crobat G ended up finding its place in the next 2 Worlds decks. That's how important dealing that extra 10 damage on a searchable card was. Now, Plus Power's been in the format forever, and Plus Power's found its way in a couple of competitive decks, but it's really interesting to see that Crobat G and Jolteon Star had a 3-year stranglehold on the format as being an extremely good tech card. Sometimes, just doing 10 damage from a power, even though you're not dealing 100 damage with some huge attack, can be the difference between winning Worlds and missing out. So it's really interesting to have a look at Jolteon Star and what it could do, and let's get to the numbers. As far as playability, Jolteon Star was just good for that format. He was a really cool tech, and if you're able to pull that combo off, he can turn things around and win you a World Championship. So, because of that, and because of the really cool backstory behind him, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. That might seem a little cruel considering he's in a World Championship deck, but he wasn't playable in every deck. He just had that one shining moment. I think an 8 out of 10 is a pretty generous score. And as far as artwork goes, I'm going to give him a 9.5 out of 10. I know that seems extremely high, but just look at him. Now, the evolutions have always been extremely cool Pokemon, and as far as an evolution group goes, they're probably close to the most popular kinds of Pokemon to collect as far as collectors go, or just Pokemon that are people's favorites, and Jolteon's no exception. This card looks extremely great, the Star cards have an amazing holographic pattern in person, and it's just a really cool card. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card of the day, and feel free to leave a comment for what you'd like to see for tomorrow's limited Heart Gold Soul Silveron card review. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.
You want the best tricks? I suggest you Prof-It. You want a mess Brit? I suggest you drop it.
Once we started rolling, you know you can't stop it. Let's go and get some lessons from JWittz and Prof-It. Yeah.